Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guests today are Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens. They are the co-authors of 3 recent books: Do Unto Earth, It's Not Too Late, and The Likely Future, Volumes 1 and 2. Welcome, Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Now, the audience, you all can find out more about Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens and their wonderful work at their website, paxwisdom.com. Now, let's start with Penelope Jean Hayes. Penelope Jean Hayes, you are the creator of viralenology. What exactly is viralenology?
Viralenology is a branch of science that mixes metaphysics and traditional science, and it is basically the study of viral energy. And viral energy is contagious energy in social interactions and the environment all around us. So the types of things that we all experience right now in this political environment, that is a very basic way of understanding viral energy. You could also think of the positive. A smile is infectious, laughter is contagious. So we all know what viral energy is, but there are a lot of implications and impacts. So we study that.
Now, what is osmotic energy balancing?
So osmotic energy balancing is a process that I developed through the Viral Energy Institute, which is the institute that I founded. And it is to balance our internal vibration with what is already vibrating perfectly. And I like to do that in nature. So some people say that, just meditating in nature makes them feel that way. So you just get retuned with what is already vibrating perfectly, and nature will do that. So that's one excellent example. So just sitting in nature, and osmosis comes into play because you don't have to do anything. This is a passive experience, just sitting quietly in nature, and you will, through osmosis, take on that vibration, and you will become homeostasis with your environment.
Right. And we've all had that experience of being in a very peaceful place. You mentioned being in nature or in a spiritual place, such as a church or a mosque or a synagogue, and your energy resonates with that. Also, we resonate with the people around us. So when everyone around us is happy and healthy, then we feel uplifted as well. Now, Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens, from an energetic perspective, what do you all see is happening right now?
Well, we're certainly at a precipice of a change and a shift energetically, and I think we all feel it. 2020 has been a challenge and has been a rebirth, and to look at it in a positive way, we have reinvented so many things of the way we thought our lives were, and we've had to completely change. So we're at the precipice of a large energetic shift right now, and it's a matter of perspective. So it's do with it what you will. And it's up to each individual to decide how they will experience that.
Now, Carole Serene Borgens, you have written some books about, or at least a book about COVID-19 pandemic. What do you see from an energetic perspective is happening now?
Well, I think it's a combination of a certain amount of denial with some people, and with others, it is recognition of their opportunity to redo their lifestyles for the better. I see that there is improvement, although there is hardship with some because their whole lifestyle has shifted. They may be working from home, teaching their children from home. Everything is a bit of an upheaval, but what I see happening and what Pax talks about is the importance of recognizing that now they have family time, for example. All the family is at home, they're taking meals together, they're speaking to each other again. There is a resurgence of a simpler way of living and staying home more, of course, because it's pretty much enforced depending on where you live. It's an improvement, a raising of consciousness, I think, for a lot of people that this is all right and this is probably going to be their new normal.
I'm a great fan of the work of Ilya Prigogine, who is a Nobel Prize winning scientist and the originator of chaos theory. And in a nutshell, in order to reorganize at a higher level, you have to go into chaos. And you see that developmentally, for example, in teenagers. If you walk into the room of the average teenager, it looks like a bomb went off and clothes and stuff are everywhere. But to me, that very much informs the energetic perspective on what we are going through this pandemic, because so much is shifting at this time. And it can be quite alarming as for us as individuals, as we have to navigate all the levels of change with our health, with our jobs, with where we live, with what's happening with our children and how they're educated and our family members. But when we understand that you have to go into chaos in order to reorganize at a higher level, then a good question for those of us who study energy and practice energy healing is, well, what's this energetic place that we're moving to? What's the shift that's happening? So Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens, how can we as people navigate the current global viral energy and this chaotic energy and all the shifts that we are experiencing?
Well, I would say to be very careful of what we take in. So when we're in that chaos that you speak of, there's a lot of purging, there's getting rid of certain things. So in some ways, our lives have been reduced, if you want to look at it that way. Again, it's a perspective. So, we don't go out as much. We have changed these things. We have kind of reduced and become a little bit more quiet in the way that we live our lives. I like to say that in the viral energy work that I do, I like to use this analogy of bringing new water in your pond. So you use the chaos analogy, but you could think of changing everything. So sometimes you need a quantum leap. You just need to change everything. And I like to say, bring fresh new water in your pond. So I think that to answer your question, to be very mindful of what it is you're replacing that with. So we're minimizing certain things, we're changing, we're finding new ways to do things. And I think in a lot of ways, it's been a very positive thing for some people, realizing that they can work from everywhere. It's been actually a really good thing for some people. But to now, as we maneuver this new normal, to really look at what are we replacing those things with, to be very mindful of what that new fresh water is that we're taking into our pond, taking into our life, because that energy is what you create your life with. It is the tools for everything that you create, for everything that you give into the world, for everything that you make and you do and how you do your work. It comes from that internal energy, that personal vibration. So it's really, really important what we surround ourselves with.
Carole Serene Borgens, any thoughts on that question about how we can navigate the current global viral energy?
Excuse me, inner strength comes to mind. Pat speaks greatly about the importance of feeling empowered, being empowered, and wanting each person to understand they have the capability to maneuver whatever they have to trust in themselves, in their higher selves, and be spending some time now looking inward, not just outward and being fearful. of what they see around the management of coronavirus, but to look within themselves and understand they have the strength to look after themselves, their families, keep themselves safe, and understand that they don't have to fear. Be mindful of their own abilities to listen to science and follow and protect themselves and their families, just to stay strong.
One of the things that we talk about here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio is that your environment is the most powerful factor. So what do I mean by your environment? I'm talking about literally your home, your office, your exterior environment, the people that you surround yourself, as well as your inner environment, how you feed yourself, your thoughts. And we also we've interviewed some feng shui experts, and I really appreciate what Penelope Jean Hayes says, is think about what water you're bringing into the pond, because one of the things that we know from feng shui is if you want to change your life, change 27 things in your house. So if you think about how we've all gone from, maybe a lot of us have worked outside of the house, or children were educated outside in schools, and now we're all together at home, and how that's very much changing our environment. So how can we consciously create an environment in which we can continue to thrive? Now, Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens, what do you all think the COVID-19 pandemic is teaching us?
That's a loaded question. We have written, Carole has mentioned the name PAX twice, and so we'd like to introduce who PAX is at this point. The books that we have written together, Carole and I, Carole is a channeler of a spirit energy called PAX, and that is how he has self-introduced. And he has described himself as the God being in the universe, but not the universe alone. It's a beautiful description, which is in our books. So this book is Due Unto Earth. I don't know if we can see that. But in terms of coronavirus, Carole has channeled PAX for these two books in which I asked the questions. So this is the Likely Future Volumes 1 and 2. And to answer your question, these books are filled with information from the spirit world on how we navigate this new life with COVID, including a solution, a possible cure for the coronavirus, which would be found in the one-time drugs that were successful for polio. So this is information directly from the spirit world from PAX, who says to look to, for our scientists, to look to the drugs that were successful for polio, the polio reduction methods that were successful at that time. Because what's important for people to know, and I'm not sure that people really think about this, is that the virus has changed into several different viruses now. So there's many different strains of the virus, and the vaccines that they're working on may accomplish handling one strain of the virus as an example, but that PAX is saying to look to the polio reduction methods to develop a vaccine that will handle all of the strains of the virus. So that's one of the really important pieces of information that we really would like to share with your audience, because if somebody knows somebody in medicine or in the scientific fields, this might be a tip that they can develop. Carole and I like to say that we're not doctors or scientists. We're just bringing information through as messengers to bring this information from the spirit world through these books to the population. And maybe somebody can do something with this, because, we have not found a cure yet. There are some vaccines that are looking very hopeful, but we don't know yet at this time if they are going to be a cure-all. And so this is a pretty big tip from the spirit world.
Carole Serene Borgens, do you have anything to add to that?
I believe that PAX is wanting us to understand that this is a repeat from history. This pandemic that we have is not new to planet Earth. It happens repeatedly, and here we are again in a situation where we have damaged our environment. to the extent that we have to deal now with this pandemic. We are not in a good position in our world right now to eradicate it, but science is working hard, and we are to look within ourselves for a certain number of answers for our own well-being right now. But I really think that a lot of this goes towards the environment, and the damage that we have done, and how we have to change our way of thinking about that, as well as how we're living in our family units, how we're working, and everything that's changing for people's lives through this pandemic. It's a broader scale. We need to be looking at not only the repair of our own way of living, but our environment as a whole. And that's something else that Pat speaks about greatly in the Do Unto Earth book, with an awful lot of information about how to effect change for the well-being of all. So for your readers that have that as a great interest, we're happy to contribute some answers from Spirit.
Right. And, you know, following up to what I said, environment being the most powerful factor, and we can think about our own environment being our home, our gardens, for example. My garden is all organic, but then how can we work together so that the planet as a whole is healthy? And one of the things we talk about here at the Natural Healing Show is you are responsible for your own vibration. Mm-hmm. So, for example, myself, I wake up every morning, I pray, I meditate, I do breathing exercises, and I consciously set my vibration for the day. And we can be responsible as we take responsibility for our own vibration, then that has a beneficial effect on everyone around us, because other people get to resonate with that inner peace, with that well-being. But then as we become more and more aware of how our energy affects the world around us, we can become mindful and protective and see ourselves as guardians of the planet Earth. Whenever I'm out gardening, and again, my garden is all organic, and if you go to catherinecarrigan.com, you can see how beautiful an organic garden can be. I think about how I am creating a safe space for all living beings around me. Now, so Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens, we talked about chaos, we've talked about the massive earth changes. How can we as individuals thrive during this time?
During the time of coronavirus, or in general, the things that we're dealing with?
Both.
I think that you hit on something really important, Catherine, when you talked about we're responsible for our own vibration. So what you're talking about is for each person to be a beacon of light. And what happens is collectively, we start to raise the consciousness of the population. So we do have within us the power to change the world. You know, you look at that on a very basic level. And if we are just responsible for how we vibrate, pure light energy, and to, you know, drop the pollutions, the toxins, those things that cloud our light, and to resonate in that and to spread that virally to the other people around us and around the world is what you're speaking of. So in terms of the virus, you know, when we raise our own vibration, we're also raising our immune system, and we're strengthening our immune system. So apart from doing what we're told to do by the scientists, you know, all of the usual things that we know to do now, apart from that, I think that looking after our own well-being in terms of our spiritual well-being, and you look at mental health too, I like to describe a mental health crisis as actually a spiritual health crisis, because I think that it all starts in our soul, and these things are very interconnected. So what we can do personally beyond just, you know, wearing our mask and washing our hands and social distancing is to be beacons of light, as you said.
Awesome. Carole Serene Borgens, anything to add to that?
I'd like to agree wholeheartedly with Penelope has said, that we need to be the light in our world. We need to be the change. We need to be kind. We need to be helpful to others going through harder times. Speaking of mental health issues, many people are not dealing well with the isolation that has come about as a result of taking care to not be spreading this virus. Many people are just not dealing with it. And if we can, in a safe way, each of us be cognizant of that and perhaps bring some light into the life of someone who is not coping well, that would be a good thing. We're limited in what we can do, but in terms of spreading kindness and love to others, paying it forward in any way that we can, this is a very good time to do it, because not only does it bring that love and light to another person, but it certainly does to our own soul, and it raises our own vibration to be able to be kind and spread kindness.
Carole Serene Borgens, I just really love and appreciate what you just said. I always say, people don't understand really what karma is. And karma is like gravity. You don't have to understand it. I don't have to understand gravity for gravity to work. And karma is basically, the law of karma is that whatever you put out is what you receive. So I always feel the most selfish thing I can ever do is be kind, generous, and thoughtful to everyone around me. And I appreciate also what you're saying about social isolation and how difficult that is. One of the things that we know is here in the US that levels of clinical anxiety and depression have quadrupled during this time, and that about 1/3 of the population is experiencing clinical levels of anxiety and depression. So these, this, and as Penelope talked about, this affects us at the soul level as well. It's a huge weight on our soul. When I do a medical intuitive reading, one of the first things that I look at is a person's overall chi level. And your mental, emotional health is very much affected, very much affects your energy. So when we take time to lift our own spirits, and we can easily do that by lifting other people around us, that has a viral effect, a viral positive effect.
Right.
So following along with your ideas about viral energy during this time, we talk about how contagious coronavirus is. What sort of positive contagious waves of beneficial energy can we unleash during this time that's going to help us as well as everyone around us?
So the mantra for the Viral Energy Institute is dilution is the solution to pollution. And that is an adage borrowed from the medical industry. And so you think of poisoning. So if you get poisoning, the automatic, the doctors and nurses always go to dilution, dilution, dilution. Well, the same holds true for toxic energy. So you have the negative and you have the positive. I like to use heavy and light because we know there's pure light and then there's what clouds the light. What's the toxins, the pollutants, the particles to that light, because light is what is. Light is what is true. So dilution as the solution to pollution works perfectly in this situation. So you look at, what can I do to dilute this negativity? What can I do to dilute what I am finding to be so heavy on me right now? And if that is isolation, well, there are a lot of great podcasts like this one that are, fantastic places where you can now virally, and I mean this now in a technology sense, connect with other people. And sometimes that's all we can do. But if we really embrace that this is, the future, this is the direction, there are so many things from this virus time that will stay with us. And one of those things is, we call mom on Zoom now and call grandma on Zoom now and all that, FaceTime and all of these things, and connecting in these ways. So that's one thing we can do. And what else can we do? Well, we can make our home environments more pleasant. We're now working from home. Our kids are being educated from home in many, many cases. And so what can we do to transform the home into this beautiful place of light? If it feels heavy, and that's a test, does it feel heavy or does it feel light? When I walk into my office, does it feel heavy? Is it a negative sensation for me, or does it feel light? What can you do? What is within your control to make this time lighter?
Great observations. And Carole Serene Borgens, anything to add to that?
I agree that certainly looking to our own home environment is most important. We need to heal ourselves first and then start looking out to our family and friends, to what we can do perhaps to help them through each day. And communication is key, I believe. Staying in touch, being helpful, being supportive. And like Penelope said, there are so many podcasts such as yours that are beneficial to people if they only knew about them. So sharing of information to each person that in a way that you think will resonate with them to help them through their days and weeks at this point. Keeping in touch with the people you love, and even those who perhaps live in your building if you are an apartment dweller, or on your street. Just checking in on people to ensure their wellness, I think is a very important thing to do.
Great suggestions. One simple thing that I'm doing, if anyone has visited catherinecarrigan.com, they know that I'm a gardener and I raise orchids. Well, I've been cultivating amaryllis at this time. And so many people are shut in, they're by themselves, but I'll give them this beautiful flower that's going to literally lighten their home and brighten their home for a period of time and uplift them. So sharing flowers is a very simple thing that we can do. Now, Carole Serene Borgens, you are a channeler, and you talked about how in the 3 books that you and Penelope Jean Hayes have published, you channel a spiritual being by the name of Pax. How did you all come into contact with a spiritual being, and how did you come together to write these 3 books?
I've been channeling Pax since the mid-1990s. We have been giving personal readings for people. We've been writing my agreement with Pax when he first introduced himself to me. And by the way, I use the term he. This is something I do. Pax is the collected consciousness, the divine wisdom, but I use the term he. My agreement with Pax was that I would take his writings and put them into book form so that they could be shared with the world. It took a long time for that to happen, but over these many years, I've continued to write the Pax Wisdoms, and meeting Penelope enabled me to co-author with her and find publishing, and that's it pretty much in a nutshell. And here we are today.
So what does this spiritual being who calls himself Pax advise us about the coronavirus?
So much. And that's why we had to do 2 volumes of The Likely Future. So we were writing Do Unto Earth, the large book on environmental repair, which we'll get to that because it's so very exciting. We always like to say it reads like a movie. It's fascinating. We were writing that when Pax interrupted our usual broadcast to bring the world information about coronavirus. So it started off as this, this is the first volume. And when we were done that and it went to print, there was more to be said. So some of that information is that hormones are very important for us to understand as they exacerbate the virus. So 2 specific types of hormones. This is from the spirit world now. This is not information that you're going to hear on the news. One is fear hormones, such as those found in animals in confinement when they are in slaughterhouses in fear of their deaths, because that is what the arrangement in a slaughterhouse is. They actually see what's going on with other animals. fear hormones are emitted. This exacerbates how the virus spreads. It makes it worse. It basically is like putting gasoline on a fire, and it's cross-contaminated from the humans to those animals. Their fear hormones makes it this, outrageous spreading situation, and it cross-contaminates back to the people. So that's why we're hearing about these meat processing plants and the outbreaks in meat processing plants. Well, PAX has given us an answer to that. So it's fear hormones. And the other hormone is growth hormones. So growth hormones would be in children. So you've heard of COVID toes in children, and also growth hormones in pregnant women. So there have been many cases reported of pregnant women who have had blood clots and other issues when they're going in for their obstetric care. And so the growth hormones and the fear hormones are to be looked at for coronavirus. Another thing that's extremely important is the word anemones. So this is a new word that PAX gives us. And if you were to look it up in the dictionary, you're probably not going to find the word anemones. PAX says that the virus inserts into the cells of our body latent buds, meaning they go dormant, called anemones. And that when we think we've recovered from the virus, not so, that it has simply gone dormant. It is a remission, not a recovery. And there can be a second and third blooming within the individual. So that we need to look for that final end to the virus. And that would be what we spoke of earlier, found in the polio reduction methods. So PAX is also giving us the answer to that. But to be very careful that when we think we've recovered, not only are we still having the virus in the cells of our body dormant that can rebloom, but we're also contagious while testing negative. These are all things that our science doesn't know and is not talking about. So these books are extremely important to get through to those people who can make a difference, and for them just to look into it, because we are now hearing cases around the world of people starting to, popping up here and there. There was one in the UK, now one in America, saying that they've caught coronavirus for a second time. We're going to be hearing a lot more of that.
And what was the word that you used, Penelope Jean Hayes? Anemones?
Anemones, that is ANENOMIES. Anemones.
And what does that word mean?
Latent buds.
Latent
buds. Mm-hmm. Buds of the virus as a bud. So think of a blooming. So it goes into the cell of your body, the cells of the body, as a bud. Then it blooms. So you experience sickness now. Now it's all the symptoms. And then it goes dormant back into a bud. So you think you've recovered, and it could stay like that for many months. It's triggered by time and time alone. There's no, sunshine or a certain time of the year that makes it bloom like you would think of a flower. It doesn't happen in the spring. It's triggered by time, and that time is different for the individual. And it then reblooms, then goes dormant again and reblooms again. So until we find the final end to the virus in the body and around the world, we will continue to have to deal with this. So this cannot be more important to share the information about these books, The Likely Future.
So Carole Serene Borgens, you've been channeling this spiritual being by the name of Pax for many years. As you have listened to the information about coronavirus, how has that altered your own health program? What are you doing differently as a result of the information that you have received?
Isolating. I live in an area where we have excellent health professionals who are guiding us through the pandemic. And isolation is a word most people don't want to hear, but what I am doing basically is living in my office, just continuing to channel PAX, continuing to write, avoiding other people, and if I have to go out, doing the simplest things, which are wearing a mask at all times, as is pretty much mandated in the area where I live, avoiding other people, washing hands, just being more careful than I could ever imagine. But you know, it's not a hardship. It becomes the lifestyle. It becomes a protection for myself, and I protect other people from me, and me from other people. It is very simple, and it works.
Okay, now we have to mention at this time that hundreds of thousands of people in the US and hundreds of thousands of people all over Europe, and I believe about 1 million people globally have passed away due to the coronavirus. And when we're talking about viral energy, we talked about fear, but there's also an element of grief, grieving losing our loved ones. What does PAX advise us about how to cope with the grief that many of us are feeling at this time?
PAX has not actually specifically addressed that question in terms of how to handle grief. I would imagine that from as I've gotten to know PAX through Carole's channeling, I would imagine that it would be a similar answer to, you know, the antidote to one thing is its opposite. So the antidote to fear is love, and just to continue spreading love, which we've already talked about. And I just can't imagine it not being as simple as that. I'm sure Carole would like to add to that answer as well.
That is such an excellent question, Catherine. And Pax has not addressed that. He has put his attention towards how to live with it and how to avoid it becoming even more of a, you know, decimating the population. He has not spoken to the grief issue. However, I would like to think that what he would say and guide us towards is kindness and love to spread to all those around us in the way of support for the people we know who have lost loved ones, to respect their lives and respect the people who are left behind, and offer love and support to them in any way possible. Pax believes so strongly and teaches us about love and the importance of sharing it to mankind. So I agree. It would be just to share love and support.
Now, of course, we're all experiencing stress due to all the sudden changes that have come about because of the pandemic. But one of the groups that's been affected the most is medical professionals and frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, the people who have to work with the COVID patients who are dying. Does PAX have any advice or words of wisdom for the medical professionals who we are all extremely grateful for, who are sacrificing their time and often their health and even their lives to help others?
Again, that is a very good question, and not something that PAX has specifically addressed in terms of healthcare workers. However, I think that might be more of a viral energy answer. So again, it's that dilution is the solution to pollution. So you're talking about people that very particularly have to be around this 90% of their life right now, because that's how much they're in the hospital. And then when they go home, you know, it's also, it doesn't really leave them. It's a topic of conversation. It can't possibly leave their consciousness. So this is clearly a situation of absolute immersion into what can be very negative, because it does involve sickness and death. And I'm sure there's good stories too, recovery stories that keeps them going. But I would say that to have an immersion of an experience, even for a few minutes, of something very opposite to that. So we talk about osmotic energy balancing. Think of an immersion, if you can even do 10 minutes of meditation, and maybe try to do it next to water that's moving. So a trickling fountain, you can buy, you can even order online some kind of a fountain. Water helps with that. It conducts inspired thought, which is thought from the divine wisdom source. And so to look at what can you do to mitigate that? What can you do to dilute what you're immersed in? So to have an immersion of something very opposite and something that feels light. And imagine that, create that how it is for you. If you can take a walk on the beach, a walk in the forest, take an hour to sit out in nature, or 10 minutes to meditate.
Carole Serene Borgens, anything to add to that?
As a former nurse myself, I would like to think it may be helpful for the professionals to remember exactly why it is they chose their profession and know that they are respected. And it may not seem that way by the people who are in denial of the virus, but overall, the professionals that are in the hospitals and caring for COVID patients are gods to many people. This is how they're perceived. And for them to realize the degree to which they are respected and loved, hopefully would help.
Now, you will channel this spiritual being that you refer to as Pax. What does a spiritual being say about how we can stay healthy during this time?
Pax has also spoken about intention. And when we were having our conversation for the book Due Unto Earth, which is the book about the environment, one of the questions that I posed to Pax was, we had a long conversation actually about health and death and life after death and all of these great things. And Pax had said that simply through our intention, we can stay healthy. And I believe the question was, how do advanced civilizations do it? You know, how do advanced beings from other planets and other galaxies, advanced souls, protect themselves and keep themselves healthy and live so much longer than we're used to living? And the answer came back: intention. And that intention setting is everything. And so, of course, I said, well, can you set an intention to, not get sick with, and, I asked about different diseases, and the answer is yes, and including coronavirus. So this is very high level mindfulness, though. So we can't say that we would snap a finger and set an intention to not get the virus. We obviously need to follow the medical advice and do all of those things that are best. But we do know that if you take it down to, the micro level, we know that we can prevent ourselves from getting a cold by setting an intention. I do it. I haven't been sick with a cold in, I think we're on 6 or 7 years now. So I do know that intention, and we know in the work that we do, all three of us, that intention, that these are spiritual resolutions, spiritual choices that we have made that have a physical manifestation in this world, and that's the mind, body, soul connection. So intention is very powerful, and we can start practicing that intention while understanding that this virus is, as they say, a novel coronavirus, which means new to everyone, that we don't have any immunity now at this stage built up because it is something brand new. To understand that this is something different, let's not take any chances, but at the same time, be mindful of our power to be very intentional about our health.
Carole Serene Borgens, anything to add to that about what we can do and what PAX advises us to do to stay healthy during this time?
Always, it's to trust in ourselves that we can have the belief and the intention to stay healthy. And in so doing, we set up our lifestyle accordingly, trusting in the fact that we're fully capable of managing our lives and avoiding the potential for disease. When we set our intention that we are going to remain healthy and well for any number of reasons, such as we have family to look after, or career, to get to, any reason, when we intend to stay well, we do, because innately it gives us a change in how we manage our day-to-day lives. And coming back to what Pax always tells us, trust in self. We are to trust in ourselves. and setting our intention to stay well, believing that we can and will, therefore, and trusting in that. This is key.
Now, your largest of the three books is called Do Unto Earth, It's Not Too Late. So, Carole Serene Borgens, you've spent many years channeling this spiritual being called Pax. What is the connection between the health of our earth and our own health?
The connection is one depends on the other, really. We have a responsibility to protect Mother Earth, our environment, and in order to do so, we must be healthy mentally, spiritually, as well as physically. One without the other isn't successful.
And Penelope Jean Hayes, anything to add to that?
So Mother Earth is the place that we reside. It's where we derive all of our resources from. It's where we get our food, our water, our air. So naturally, as we have been polluting the earth, we have been polluting our own bodies, and these cannot be separated, as Carole had mentioned. So the health of planet Earth is our health. And she is our Mother Earth. And we say that for a reason. So it is a holistic planet. And we also find out through Pax in the book, Do Unto Earth, it's a holistic universe. And Pax has said that when we pollute our environment, we are sending out waves of vibration deep into the universe about what we are doing here on planet Earth. So it is so much more interconnected than we have any idea.
That's quite interesting. So, how can healing the earth and taking responsibility for our own environment heal the earth and heal us?
As we heal planet Earth, we begin to heal ourselves, obviously environmentally and health-wise, but also spiritually. So it is a rejuvenation of our connection to this planet, and it must be done. Pax says that we have only 8 to 12 years on planet Earth until a fail-safe point is reached for the wellness of this planet. And the word fail-safe means not the end of the world in 8 to 12 years, but that we would have reached a point of no return if we do not change our trajectory. So that trajectory of pollution, we think about global warming. Well, global warming is an effect of the pollution. We think about our unconscious way of living as we buy products, and every one of us being consumers. So you drive a Prius, but someone else, doesn't. But also, do we know where that electricity comes from? And there are ways that even that is rather polluting to this planet. So as we make choices as individuals, make choices as consumers, this has that ripple effect in our environment. So it's to each one of us to decide, how do I want to live and how do I want to drive this economy? Because us as the consumer actually determines what products, the they will make. The they out there, the manufacturers out there, they're not the big bad wolf. They're actually creating stuff that the population wants. So that is up to all of us, and that should be extremely empowering.
So, Carole Serene Borgens, I'll let you have the last word. Any final thoughts for our audience?
I wanted also to use the word empowering. Each time we make a choice that is a good choice for the healing, the preservation of Mother Earth, I believe that we feel empowered for having done so, which gives us greater and greater levels of strength and intention, and moving forward to learn how we can do even more for our planet, bring in more people, educate more people about what can be done. It is empowering, and the wave therefore grows as more and more people experience the feeling of doing good for our planet. It's such a huge undertaking, and yet when we break it down into small pieces that each of us is capable of managing, it begins and it grows and it multiplies, and we have a movement and we're all feeling empowered by it. It's taking the first step for each of us to become involved.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guests today have been Penelope Jean Hayes and Carole Serene Borgens. You can find out more about them and their wonderful work at paxwisdom.com. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.